Hey everyone, I am back with a video that I'm super excited to make. We're going to be talking all about red shimmer shadows. And I'm using that term red a little bit loosely because I would actually say that these shades are sort of red adjacent. It's very difficult to find true red shimmer shadows. A lot of true red pigments are not FDA approved to be worn around the eye area. And then there's some technology about making pigments that don't blend out to something that is red adjacent to be challenging. I'm not an expert on this topic. However, I do feel like anytime you have something that is sort of hard to come by, it ends up being coveted more for good reason. That being said, I do think I have some great options and ones that I think will be shades that may satisfy that red crave. Let's swatch, talk about, and try on a bunch of options. I also want to mention that the formula for Oden's Eye Leon just didn't really work for me and I no longer have it. It creased on me very quickly and I'm not discouraging you from trying it if you're keen on it, but if you're wondering where that shade is, that's why. Alright, starting off with an oldie but a goodie, this is Cerise Waves from Terra Moons. I honestly think that when it comes to pressed shadows, this is one of the best options that I have. This is a good old-fashioned red shimmer shadow. It is a little bit pink leaning as you can see, but you'll see as we go that, the shades that are just shimmers and don't shift are the ones that land closest to red if that's what you're going for. When you introduce some of the shades that have a chrome shift, they tend to have somewhat of a fiery shift or a green shift. And Cerise Waves is just a good old-fashioned red shimmer. I believe it's available for under $10 as well. Alright, and the next shade I have from Terra Moons is another oldie but a goodie. This is Venus in Chains. I want to say it came out 3 or 4 years ago. I included it in this video and I know that this is definitely not a pure red. It's a red adjacent, but it is a beautiful shade. This is what I would describe as an orangey red. It's high impact on the first swipe, it's not flaky, it's quite sparkly, and it has a really beautiful kind of yellow-green shift. Definitely a Terra Moons classic for a reason. If you like orange-leaning red shadows, I think this is a great option, and it's a beautiful summer shade in general, summer going into fall. Alright, next shade we have from Terra Moons is Martian Dust, and this is also an older shadow. I want to say this is 4 years old at this point. This was a summer release, and this shade is what I would describe as sort of a burnt red shadow. It's a little bit on the less vibrant side, but I think there is a sophistication to the tone of this shade. This was around the time when we were getting several kind of more flaky type of textures or just shadows that had larger sparkle particles in general. And I would describe the shade as having an orangey yellow shift. And this is one of the few shadows that I'm showing that is no longer currently available. Alright, the next shade I have is from Clionadh, and this is called Ring of Fire. Ring of Fire is from the Deep Sea Treasures palette, which has 8 pans and originally was only available as a palette. However, now you can get the singles individually as well. Now, this is definitely what I would consider to be an orange-leaning red shade. I have to say, honestly, Clionadh hasn't made really very many red shadows in general. This is the shade that comes closest, and it is definitely a beautiful shade. It's high impact, it's sparkly, it's got a gorgeous yellow-orange shift with maybe just a hint of green. I think you'll see that there are quite a number of shades that are kind of like this in the selection that I'm showing. Alright, now we're going to get into some Touch of Glam, and I've actually got 4 shades here. Touch of Glam has some great kind of red-leaning shimmer shadow options. And something that you can always depend on with Touch of Glam is some of the most unique formulas. The first shade we have is called Leave Me Alone, and this is what I would describe as sort of a burnt red-orange. It has some depth to it, some grunginess, some moodiness. I believe that this is one of their birthday type shadows, and these shadows in general I really am drawn to because they have multicolored sparkles. Really one of my favorite red leaning shades from the line, and it has this beautiful yellow, orange, and green shift. Next shade from Touch of Glam is Pumpkin Spice and Everything Extra, and this shade I would say actually is giving some similar vibes to the shade Leave Me Alone. You have sort of a blackened, grungy red, a little bit less orange in its base in my opinion, and a little bit deeper. I think if you are someone who likes deep, grungy, moody colors and maybe is a little bit intimidated of red shades, this might be a nice way to dip your toes in. And I think this is also one of the birthday type shadows that have the multicolored sparkles as well as a chrome shift. I would describe this shade as having a soft orange-green shift. Alright, and this is probably one of my favorite reds from Touch of Glam, and it's just a straight up shimmer. This is called Roses Are Dead, and this shade definitely reminds me a lot of what I enjoy from the Terra Moon shade called Cerise Waves. You have no chrome shift, just a really pretty red leaning shimmer. This shade I would say is not the most sparkly, but it's got a lot of shine to it. It's very high impact, almost metallic looking. Gorgeous shade, really packs a punch on the lids. And I do think that despite this not being kind of a pure ruby red, this is quite a stunning and satisfying option. All right, and the last shade I have from Touch of Glam is called A Deeper Connection. And all of the shadows that are in these square pans are part of the Color Me Multi collection. The texture of these shadows is very unique. It feels almost like soft, a little bit squishy in the pan. But interestingly, I really don't find these to be creasy on the lids. You need the smallest amount. A little bit of product goes a long way. This is another shade from Touch of Glam that I would describe as having almost like a burnt orange red base. And it has primarily a yellow orange shift. Let me know in the comments if you've tried the Color Me Multi formula. I feel like a lot of other people have told me that they really enjoy it as well. Alright, I have a couple of shadows from Shine by SD. One of them actually is no longer available, which I'm very sad to see. This is Flamethrower. I was probably this shadow's #1 fan when it came out. This, I would say, is probably the most beautiful orangey red that I've seen. It's super sparkly, super high impact, and it has a beautiful golden shift. Something that I've really enjoyed about Shine by SD shadows over the years is that they really do make some of the most sparkly shadows in my collection, and they have a drier texture that I do think works for a wider variety of skin types in general. Alright, and the second shade I have from Shine by SD is currently still available. This is Darkened Flame. This is kind of like, again, what I would describe as sort of a burnt, blackened, red-toned shadow. This is what I would describe as a jeweled multichrome shadow. It's a part of the Divinity collection, and it has a very smooth texture, and it has a beautiful kind of green-orange leaning shift. Again, if you like shadows that are red leaning, maybe aren't so bright, and have a little bit of grunginess and moodiness to it, I think this may be a good option. All right, now we have one of my favorites that I'm showing you. This is from Violette FR. This is their liquid shadow in the shade Paris La Nuit. I have, in general, nothing but good things to say about the formula from Violette. It's really one of the best liquid shadow formulas that I've tried. It's up there with Lisa Eldridge for me. And honestly, they do colorful shades better than any other brand. Now, these are pricey. These are $32. These are probably one of the most expensive liquid shadows that I've tried, but I can honestly say that the quality is very much there. And this is also probably one of the truest red shades that I'm showing today. And one other thing I really like to do with these shades is to use them as statement bold eyeliners, like a winged liner with one of these shades. You get some great control over the product placement. If you've tried this formula, definitely let me know in the comments. And the next shade I have is also a liquid shadow. This is from Glisten Cosmetics, and this is the shade Sorcery. Again, I think that this is probably one of the truest reds that I'm showing today. This shade is a really gorgeous ruby red. Now, one of my preferred ways of using the ones from Glisten is to layer it over another shadow. I do find them to be maybe a little bit more finicky than I do the Violette. But in terms of the formulation itself, I do think that Sorcery is probably one of the best from Glisten. In my demonstration, you can see that I'm just layering it up a little bit to get my desired opacity. And it did well with that, which is not the case for all liquid shadows. Next, we have a shade from Beaute. This is one of their powder shimmer shadows, and it was made in collaboration with Courtney Quarantine. I am really a big fan of Courtney's work. I think that she has beautiful looks. She also gravitates to a lot of products that I also gravitate toward. And when she was talking about this collaboration, she talked a lot about how she was trying to make the impact of this shimmer shadow a little bit something special, especially compared to some of the previously existing shimmer shadows from Beaute. And you can get this shade individually. I tried to avoid showing shades in palettes because I wanted to focus on single shadows. This is what I would describe as a pinky red, and as you can see, it is very shiny and reflective. Alright, the next shade I'm showing is from Dieverune, and this was done in collaboration with Lee Altringer. It's from a Halloween release, I want to say almost 2 years ago at this point. This is an absolutely gorgeous shade called Necromancy. It's what I would describe as an orange toned red. And I think this is one of their few shades that is supposed to be pressed flakies. So it is a little bit different in formulation. You get a lot of shine, sparkle, and reflectiveness with this shadow. And it has a beautiful shift, including yellow, orange, and red. And as I've said before, I truly love the single shadows from Dieverune. Definitely some of the most interesting singles in my collection. Alright, we're closing in on the last couple shades here. I have one from Cryptine Cosmetics. This was part of their Halloween launch last year. This is the shade called Inferno. If you aren't familiar with Cryptine Cosmetics, they are a Chinese beauty brand, and I believe they've just passed their 2-year anniversary. And in that short amount of time, they have truly made some incredible palettes and single shadows. And this is one of their single shadows called Inferno. So this is definitely a red leaning single shadow. It has a hint of orange in there, and it's got a beautiful orangey green shift. And I've talked about the shimmers from Cryptine Cosmetics as truly being some of the best shimmer shadows that I've experienced in palettes, but I would say the same is true for their single shadows. Very high impact, sparkly, shifty, truly no duds in their range from me. Alright, and last but not least, we have a shade from Dieverune. This was done in collaboration with Andromeda. It came out around last Halloween, I believe. I would basically describe this as a red leaning metallic shadow. It has a hint of orange, and it's got silver leaning sparkles throughout. So what I would say is stand out about this shade is truly how shiny and metallic it is. This one, I would say, doesn't have as much of a chrome shift, but its shine and sparkle are definitely stand out. All right, now that we've had a chance to nerd out about a bunch of different red shimmer shadows, I would love to hear what you think of these options. I have to say, I am also really excited about some of the sneak peeks I've seen coming. Urban Decay is apparently re-releasing their cult classic red shimmer shadow called Gash. And I've already started to see some sneak peeks for an amazing red looking shadow from Terra Moons. So you can definitely expect to see me talk about and try on those shades in other videos. If you made it to the end of this video, I would love it if you would leave me some type of red emoji. And I would also love to hear what other type of shadows you'd like to see me nerd about in some of my upcoming videos. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.